Hello and welcome to the Stars Align podcast. I'm here with Stars Align co-founder and astrologer Grace McGrade, and we are going over the astrology of 2026.
Yay, let's do it. Are you excited?
I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah. It's been funny. I've been listening to a lot of other astrologers' take on it, and a lot of them either theorize that it's going to be, the beginning of a utopian period of innovation and much needed change and revolution, or complete total world war, which is fascinating.
Okay, so we're in for a lot of information dissecting today.
Well, we're recording this on a very important day, which is the day that Neptune moves into Aries. And Neptune is the planet of imagination, intuition, creativity, illusions, the soul. It's supposed to be a higher octave of Venus, but it can also represent things like fantasy and drug addiction and escapism and feeling kind of foggy or hazy. So if you've been noticing, particularly in the past year, there's kind of been an energy of haze, confusion, an inability to really get much done. It's almost been like intuitive overload. Part of why is because we've had Neptune completing a 164-year cycle through the zodiac, culminating its time in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. And a lot of that has just felt incredibly murky, confusing, and emotionally overwhelming. But interestingly enough, I think Neptune moved into Pisces when Instagram was invented.
Oh, wow.
And Neptune really represents what we pedestalize, what we idealize, what we glamorize, what we look to on a cultural level.
Right.
So with Neptune and Pisces, there was a major emphasis on imagery and the virtual world being more powerful than the physical world. But today, with Neptune moving into Aries, that starts to begin to change, where things like physicality, art takes on a sort of more authentic, genuine, rebellious, edgy tone. So we're kind of in the middle of beginning to feel that. But it's really going to be super powerful in February.
Okay, wow. So for 14 years then, we've been kind of in a haze.
Yeah.
I know, for everyone I've spoken to, it really has been a period of people finding it difficult to get anything done. And I think that really did coincide with social media and technology, which is funny because, like you've spoken to me about before, Neptune is very intertwined with photography.
Yeah, photography.
Things like art, media, Instagram. So I think that kind of haze that we've been under has been intertwined with all of those innovations in technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Neptune has a cultural explanation, and then it also has a sort of spiritual explanation. And the cultural explanation, the way it's showed up, this Neptune and Pisces era, has been a romanticization of past eras. If you look at the generation, what are you called again?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. Okay, a great astrologer. If you look at Gen Z, like there's kind of an emphasis on romanticizing past decades. Like there was an era where everybody was romanticizing like the early 2000s. Then it was indie sleaze. Before that, it was the 70s. There hasn't really been a sense of us looking towards anything new. Now, the benefit of this cycle that we're leaving was it made us more fluid. It made us more compassionate. It made us more intuitive. People didn't use the word like vibes to describe anything 14 years ago.
Right.
Now people are like, what are the vibes? Like that's just entered our vernacular because we're better at sort of tuning into and explaining energy. But the pitfalls of Neptune and Pisces has been an overemphasis on victimhood and sort of feeling victimized by reality. So we're kind of leaving this era behind where everyone's sort of become like a TikTok seer. There's like a gender fluidity, there's an openness, but there's not a lot of grounding where everybody's perception feels connected to the online perception. It's almost like empathy to a fault where people are afraid to speak their mind because, the virtual world is listening or watching.
Right.
Whereas in the past, Neptune and Aries really coincided with an idealization of the warrior archetype. A lot of astrologers look back on the Civil War. And what's interesting about the Civil War is it was the first time that photos of war had ever been taken.
So this is the last time Neptune moved into Aries from Pisces. Okay.
Yeah. And there was this expectation that going to war was I mean, that was how you became a hero. There were no celebrities back then. It was like the most heroic thing you could do. So everyone idealized this archetype of the warrior or the person who got sent to war, and there was a draft and everyone's super excited to go to war, and kind of went into it with the expectation that it was going to be this really noble, beautiful thing. And then, of course, the photos taken after battles really disturbed the public, and it sort of changed the perception of violence and war massively,
Yeah.
as Neptune does. But the Civil War was fought for a noble cause. It was about the freedom of the soul, right? Like it was a cause that had to do with emancipation and getting rid of enslavement, that kind of thing. So although I don't see that playing out this go around, it's almost like, oh, we've been through this 14-year period of endings, culminations, psychic upgrades, revelations, deeper compassion. And now we're going to do something with what we've downloaded, what we've intuited. Now we're going to make the changes. It almost feels like it hasn't been time, and it's going to be time, and then time accelerates massively.
Right. There's been a lot of talk from astrologers that say that this could end up being another war, or, a huge kind of temperamental change in culture and the world. And I'm curious to hear kind of what your takes are on what that's going to look like in your mind, and if there's any changes you see happening, any specifics you can get into with what you predict Neptune and Aries will look like culturally, politically, on a mass scale.
Yeah. I mean, I think in order to simplify this, like, let's break it down. Like, let's talk about Pisces, Aries, Saturn, and Neptune. Okay. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune. So Neptune in Pisces just feels like a million times of Neptune.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've already kind of touched on what Neptune symbolizes, imagery, movies, illusion. Neptune is the vehicle that changes your perception. Neptune is also immersive. So it is the energy of what is. It's the energetics of what is. Neptune is considered a higher octave of Venus, which is our relationships. Neptune rules the relationships that change our perception of the soul, spiritual awakening. When I think about Neptune, I think there's this Carl Jung quote, which is, the madman drowns in the river the mystic swims in. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's this energy that, when integrated, can create massive awakenings and really take the soul to a higher level of consciousness. When navigated poorly, it can create complete insanity and mental illness.
Right.
So that is Piscean, right? Now, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and Pisces is not often considered a dualistic sign, but it is. You're a Pisces, my brother's a Pisces. A lot of Pisces in my life, they have this propensity to talk to God, connect with God, and also get completely possessed and derailed. You know what I mean? And part of why that is because as a Pisces, you are the closest to the divine and simultaneously aware of the separateness between you and the divine, and kind of yearning that inclusion. It's associated with Christianity. What have we seen in the past 14 years? A huge resurgence of Christians sort of being like, this is the end of times, people returning to Christianity, people returning to mysticism. But Pisces really teaches us how to surrender control, because Pisces knows no other way, because it's in that immersive, energetic, atmospheric soup.
Right.
That is very Neptunian.
Right. And Pisces is grieving a
It's
lot
grieving.
As well. I think
it's ending,
Pisces,
culmination.
Yeah, they take on a lot of collective pain.
Yeah. Not knowing where you begin and the collective ends is a huge
100%.
thing. So that's the energy we've been in. And it's served us immensely. A lot of people have had their awakening in the past 11 years, myself included. We've gotten a lot of intuitive information. A lot has been happening in the astral planes. A lot has been happening in our sleep and meditation. A lot of people have been getting, to access higher levels of consciousness that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Now, Aries and Pisces sit side by side. Pisces rules the end of the zodiac. Aries rules the beginning. And it's the first sign of the zodiac. And it is the sign of pure consciousness. So if you can imagine, between Pisces and Aries that's where God is.
Right.
That's just where creation exists.
Right.
So in Aries, we have the drive of consciousness to experience itself, The drive, it's pure consciousness wanting to experience individuation, wanting to survive, and wanting to experience form. And that's where we find willpower. So we're moving out of surrendering and into finding our willpower again in a very, very big way. Right. A lot of people associate Aries with war, and I guess that is one element of Aries, but really Aries every day is a fight to survive. We fight to survive every day. Right. And Aries kind of guards that territory where it only sees pure potential laid in front of it because it's the first sign. Aries energy can be a tyrannical toddler where everything is like a series of firsts. Like, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? Everything feels new. Right. It can also symbolize tyrannical leaders, authoritarian leaders, people who misuse their power, people who are kind of stuck in fight or flight. But you have to remember over the course of the past, let's say 4 years, we've had eclipses alleviating a lot of the lower expressions of Aries. And we've also had Chiron in Aries. And as Chiron transited through Aries, it helped us heal individuation wounds around fight or flight, those kind of cortisol moments, because Aries really responds to the first few years of life. And so the Aries energy has already been getting upgrades. So I would like to think that we're going to see the higher expression of Aries, which is where one finds their mission. Mm-hmm. In Pisces, there is no mission. The mission is to just get out of here and get back there. Right. Totally. In Aries, you develop a sense of mission. There's a sense of autonomy, a drive to experience physical reality. I mean, it's ruled by Mars too, and I think that yes, Mars is the planet that rules war, but also without Mars, nobody would ever do anything. Nobody has any desire to do anything. When you get up every single day and you go to work and you move, that's Mars. Yeah. So all of these planets and signs have a huge purpose in place. Yeah, totally. So I think that this is really about from surrender to embodiment, from letting go and having to trust in the divine and trust in what you can't see, and feeling suspended, to then thinking about, okay, what do I want to create? And in this way, on a more esoteric level, it's a merging of the 5D and the 3D. Mm-hmm. So of course, today we have Neptune entering Aries. This really bodes well for people who have already been doing the work, so to speak, have already been through the dark night of the soul and developed a spiritual practice. But what we start to see is the birth of a new dream, the birth of new strides in culture, new ideas, fashion kind of favoring sports or like warrior archetypes or more masculine silhouettes. Neptune in Aries, it paints a picture of somebody who is a warrior at the epicenter of sort of the cultural paradigm, as opposed to in Pisces, it was kind of like a Instagram girl, an e-girl. Right, totally. Totally. I mean, I wrote something about the 2026 predictions we had, and one of them was about how Neptune in Pisces had a lot to do with the emergence of plastic surgery and filters and AI, and this kind of seemingly unattainable face and look where people were merging with plastic and things that weren't necessarily natural. Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's been a lot, especially with like Ozempic and stuff like that. You weren't going to see the side effects of that stuff with Neptune and Pisces, because it's not there. So it's like beauty became really illusory. Yeah, illusory. And then with Neptune entering Aries and Saturn also entering Aries, I feel like that's when we're going to start to see the consequences of some of these augmentations, because Neptune and Pisces is about augmented reality. Mm-hmm. And there's always a lower expression and a higher expression. Like I know so many of my clients have had these transcendent instances of having to really trust in their intuition, whether it's because they've undergone unexplainable circumstances in karmic relationships, or have had to really see that their intuition has been pointing them towards the truth this whole time, and they have learned not to trust it. But now with Neptune and Aries, everything becomes obvious. It's almost like, okay, the lights are on. We're in high definition. This is what the truth is. This is the hard, cold reality. Aries doesn't do fluff. Right. It just wants what's authentic and what's true. Right. And so with the culture and the beauty standard, like we were talking about before, it's like people are now wanting the real thing. Yeah. Moving on to, as well, we can kind of
merge the two topics, but
Saturn.
Saturn is also entering Aries come February, right?
On the 13th of February, Saturn enters Aries. So this energy that we've been in the past 2.5 years has been really hard. And that's because Saturn, which I always think of as our matrix, yes, it's things that we don't want to do, and it's limits and it's boundaries. But Saturn is structure. It's the molecular structure of reality. It's the world that we're living in. For example, social distancing during COVID. When social distancing laws were put in place, that was like a couple days into Saturn entering Aquarius. So
that's all Aquarius wants to do is social distance.
Yeah, they're social but from a distance. And of course, what happened? Society moved online. People were doing groups online. There's something to be said about when Saturn changes signs, the order that reality takes kind of shifts. So with Saturn in Pisces, I personally was going through my Saturn return, and I had a lot of people who were also dealing with invisible things like gas leaks, mold, things that they can't see. A lot of the consequences or limitations or karmic lessons were not actually physically happening here, but kind of happening in the ether.
Wow.
You know what I mean? With Saturn in Aries, it's almost like instant ramifications that are playing out in real time. And what I think that this is really about with Neptune moving into Aries, if Neptune is the imagination and it's the perception we choose to buy into, right? There can be consequences for that. So if you're somebody who you haven't healed your early childhood wounds, right? And you think that life is out to get you, and you start visualizing these worst case scenarios, Saturn is there being like, oh, you thought about this? Here you go, here you go, here you go. Where reality starts to sort of supply you with a very quick feedback system.
Okay, so you're saying that you think it's going to be like instant manifestation.
For some people, yeah, 100%. I think that there are people who will never think about it that way because that's not the level of consciousness they're operating from.
Right.
I heard an astrologer talk about Saturn doesn't do well in Pisces because Saturn is cold and things take a long time with Saturn, and Saturn is about delayed gratification, and Aries is hot and it's about immediate gratification. But I don't think that Saturn is as punitive. I think Saturn's very misunderstood. Saturn works with Chiron, right? And Chiron is our core wound. Saturn is where we have the illusion of separateness from the collective, where it feels like reality is happening to us instead of in response to us.
Okay.
So I think that with Saturn and Neptune both here, on a personal level, we start to see immediate results for what we dreamed of. But it's kind of like, cool, like you wanted this. Are you actually going to do the work? Are you going to show up and do the work?
Right.
And if people are operating from those lower expressions of Aries, like trying to control other people or be aggressive or impulsive, there's also consequences for that too. But it's funny because when you have Saturn, which is form, and Neptune, which dissolves boundaries, coming together, there's something else that's definitely taking place. And I think on a global level, this signifies a mass change of guard politically. The last Neptune-Saturn conjunction we had, the Berlin Wall fell.
Wow.
And that's quite literally like the dispelling of boundaries. During other Saturn-Neptune conjunctions throughout history, we have the forming of the Soviet Union, we have the Russian Revolution. There's just usually a change in guard, a change in power that dissolves old structures, seemingly like overnight. So
Right.
When these two planets come together, which this is very unusual, they come together on February 20th and they're meeting at 0 degrees of Aries, which is the first point in the zodiac, which a lot of astrologers refer to as an initiation point.
Okay. So you think that this is going to be a change happening globally?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So look out for February 20th.
Yeah.
Global change.
Global events.
Are there any specific points you want to hit about your predictions for 2026 in terms of this Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we've been in this process of moving away from codependency in a really big way for the past 5 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I think that there's kind of a sense, and a lot of people talk about like timeline splitting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like almost like the world is going to taper off into two, and some people will live in like a hell of their own design, and some people will live in like the joyous creation of their wildest, wettest, craziest dreams. And I think that that will start to play out.
Okay, interesting.
Unpopular take, I think that this is the year for men. And I think that this is a year for men in terms of women have been dealing with a lot of psychic downloads in solitude. And there's kind of been a collective energy of women doing a lot of the spiritual work.
Okay.
And it's kind of like they're suddenly out of that and back in their bodies. And all those downloads that have been like percolating up here suddenly affect men. So I think it's a huge spiritual awakening for the masculine consciousness on this planet in a really big way. I think that it's a year where everything becomes obvious. You start basically seeing people in high definition, for better or worse. People stop entertaining things for clout. It's the end of clout as currency. People start favoring things that are genuine. You stop, like, energy doesn't lie. You know what I mean? Energy doesn't lie. And on Instagram, energy can lie. You know, I also think that people are going to stop using Instagram as much. I think that it's going to no longer be our primary like medium of connection, especially as like AI continues to make things so like more and more insane.
So do you think that there's going to be a move from social media spaces that people communicate through to real in-person?
Yeah, totally. 100%.
So we're moving out of this social media metaverse and into physically interacting more.
Yeah, completely. 100%.
Well, I think that's great for everybody.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that people have been really craving it.
100%.
All of these Saturn and Neptune and Pisces issues have really been coming to a peak.
Yeah. I mean, it's perpetuated a lot of victimhood. Think about it. Like, we are virtually attuned to all of the suffering in the world. Like, that is so Neptune and Pisces. Like, to virtually be able to see all of the suffering in the world, that has been horrific, but it's done wonders for human consciousness in another way. It's really helped people see what's going on. I mean, you have this magical device where you can see what's happening all over the fucking world. This next era is about doing something about it. It's about doing something. You can't just sit and mope. You have to do something about it, because Neptune and Saturn and Aries inspire bravery, and they also inspire autonomy. You know, we're no longer afraid to do things because of how everyone in a virtual space will react. You know, it's a rise of autonomy. I think that some of the pitfalls are going to be impulsivity. And I mean that on all levels of Earth, you know, from our authority figures, perhaps, you know, being tyrannical, but at the same time, the collective is willing to meet tyranny with equal force.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's great. We're stepping into a period of putting our ass behind things, actualizing our dreams, making the moves we've been too afraid to make with Neptune and Saturn and Pisces. Yeah. I remember we had a conversation where you were talking about how we're going to need to be more careful and cognizant of the stories we tell ourselves and what we say because of this instant manifestation.
Yeah, anything that has to do with Mars, like, manifestations get activated. They just you know, they just do. You know, so something becomes physical.
Right. So depending on where your head and words are at, this could go one of two ways.
Yeah. Like, let's say you're the person who spent Neptune and Pisces addicted to the internet and obsessed with clout, and maybe you were trying to be famous, or you were trying to be an influencer, and you feel personally victimized by reality, and you're just tuned out all of the spiritual expressions of Neptune, and you entered this period. It's going to feel like a hellscape because you haven't done the work. But the majority of people have done the work, so to speak. You know, like, they've been grieving or mourning or acknowledging their intuitions. So I think that this becomes a period where all these things you've been waiting for happen. But sometimes what you want is not what you need. And so that, I think, is where Saturn comes in. Saturn supplies you with what you need, but you're kind of like, you know what? I'm not this person anymore. Neptune in Aries is teaching us about individual spiritual gifts. Saturn in Aries is teaching us about individuation and desire and the pitfalls of that. So it becomes a much faster period, particularly with Uranus re-entering Gemini in July. In February, we have a solar eclipse in Aquarius, which is a huge upgrade collectively, where we're kind of propelled into new timelines because the solar eclipse, in new territory, activating an advancement in consciousness, an advancement of thought, increased hunger for newness and innovation.
What are we looking at for the rest of the year following that?
One of the main months of this year is February because we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction occurring on the 20th, activating this ignition point. This is the first degree of the zodiac. This is like where all consciousness exists. It's like pure potential, pure possibility. Some astrologers are saying this hasn't happened in 9,000 years, whatever. Like this is new territory.
Okay.
And a couple days earlier, we have the solar eclipse in Aquarius, which is co-ruled by Saturn, which represents the responsibility of uplifting humanity.
Right.
The responsibility of the tribe.
Right.
This could be, I almost feel like it could be like an increased access to higher information or hidden information is working alongside this conjunction, where shocking information comes to light, suddenly there's a change of guard, etc. On a personal level, this is like an increased desire for freedom, a cerebral advancement of consciousness. Perhaps we're tuning into other timelines. Life starts to get a little bit more surreal and strange, and we're catapulted into new timelines. Solar eclipses make the changes that we are afraid to make for us.
Okay.
And they ignite things. Lunar eclipses take things away.
What area of people's lives do you think it'll be hitting the most?
It really depends on your rising sign, but I think that anywhere where you have felt like an outsider looking in, because that's very Aquarian. A lot of people say, oh, Aquarians are about community and friendship. Aquarians don't feel a sense of community. They feel like aliens.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you defeat the imposter syndrome and you tune into your genius. That's what Aquarius is. It's the most evolved of the air signs. It's our genius. It's our ideas that seem to come out of nowhere. Our sudden realizations, our aha moments, our synchronicities. That kind of energy starts to come in, and rather than sit in the uncomfortability or let life happen to us, we start to perpetuate change. So this is about new experiences.
Okay.
And an advancement of human consciousness.
And so I know around the summertime, Jupiter goes into Leo after having been in Cancer.
Yeah.
What is that going to look like?
So Jupiter, a lot of people think of Jupiter as just like the planet of abundance, faith, and luck. But something interesting about Jupiter is it actually protects us from asteroids and meteors. Like
on a physical level.
Yeah. Its mass kind of takes these foreign objects out of our field and protects us in a really big way.
Wow.
Now, Jupiter's transit through Cancer, which is good news. If you're a Cancer, you still have Jupiter in your chart, kind of acting as a protective mechanism that is helping you expand. Jupiter in Cancer really has been about realms of faith and belief that have to do with our ancestry and where we're from.
Oh.
Interestingly enough, America is a Cancer. So who knows what Jupiter's been protecting America from, this past year. This is what it looks like.
Wow. Wow.
But Jupiter, up until Jupiter's ingress into Leo, Jupiter continues to sort of add a spiritual influence to our homes, themes that have to do with ancestry, where we're from, hidden histories, helping us to reparent ourselves, helping us to find nourishment, be better at nourishing ourselves in private, teaching us how to care for ourselves like we would a child. It also bodes well for women's movements, empathy, compassion. Last year it was hard, like there was a lot of stuff in Pisces. So it kind of just translated to emotional overwhelm. But it kind of serves as a balance, up until July. Now, when it enters Leo in July, it opposes Pluto, which is currently in Aquarius, which is a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
And by that time, the South Node, which is what we're letting go of in the next 2.5 years, will have been in Leo. So that's where we start to let go of the lower expressions of Leo, like a need for validation, recognition, drama, egotism, that kind of thing. But that opposition that occurs early July could kind of create a disparity between our need for acceptance and our desire for approval from our peers versus like what our heart actually wants,
Okay.
And this access between Cancer and Leo is really about the heart.
So it's
really is about the heart. Heart expansion, massive heart expansion. I also see it like boding well for like a return of theater,
Okay.
fearless self-expression, that kind of thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And also just people being honest about who they love.
Right.
You know, people like declaring love, you know, like people being truthful. You know, Pluto in Aquarius is kind of like the death of cool, you know.
Right. That's good for all of you twin flame relationships.
Yeah. It's kind of like Pluto in Aquarius wants you to kill cool. Like it doesn't want you to think about what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And pretend to be detached because it's what looks good, you know, and not be so focused on the future.
Right.
You know?
Right. So
Don't be
caring and doing is cool this year.
Definitely, 100%. So last year we kind of had a teaser of Uranus, which is the planet of advancement, technology, awakening in Gemini. Now it's been in Taurus for quite some time, almost 7 years. At the moment, it's retrograded back into Taurus. What I believe has been happening with Uranus in Taurus, it's been upgrading the ley lines of the Earth. It's been upgrading Earth's energetic meridians and creating almost like an increased awareness of the history of Earth and Earth's body.
Okay.
You know, so we've been getting an increased bodily awareness as well as the Earth.
Okay.
Right? So it's been creating awakenings related to
the body
and Earth's body as well.
Okay.
So when Uranus moves into Gemini, it's very different. This becomes like a mass deprogramming of opinions and thoughts. It's almost like getting plugged into a Tesla coil intellectually.
Right.
Where there's like a hunger for newness and culture becomes more controversial, media becomes more controversial. We had a teaser of this last year, and one of the things I said about it was politically, you could be somebody who stood on one end of the spectrum, then suddenly Uranus entered Gemini and you switched your opinion. We saw a lot of this.
Yeah, we did.
So it's kind of like, oh, you believe this one thing, now you're going to have to change your mind kind of thing. Uranus and Gemini transits have often corresponded with major leaps in communication and technology. The Polaroid camera was invented with Uranus and Gemini. This could create upgrades to how we travel, get from point A to point B, new forms of social media. It also creates a desire to really kind of speak the truth, regardless of who's hearing it, you know?
So we're getting truth upgrades.
Truth upgrades, cerebral upgrades. And Uranus wants us to break free of control
so
and programming.
The Epstein files are coming out this year.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it's confirmed.
Yeah, it could also create like, freedom of information. Uranus in Gemini, the printing press was created with Uranus and Gemini. It used to be that the Bible could only be read by a priest to his clergy. There was a Uranus and Gemini transit. Suddenly the Bible, everyone can own it, right? Yeah. So it's about like the freedom of information and an increase in how information is spread. This is also where we could see things like hacktivism. Yeah, like hackers.
Like data leaks.
Okay. Yeah, more polarizing opinions. Okay. Shorter attention spans, unfortunately. This is where reality really starts to speed up. And this happens in April 26th. And as Pluto settles deeper into Aquarius, where we've been facing kind of the shadows of the digital age, they actually make supportive trines to Uranus and Gemini. That's great. So that's kind of interesting.
Is this the most amount of change you've seen
since COVID?
Since COVID, it is going to be the most amount of change in a year period.
Yeah.
You've seen as Astrologer.
Yeah.
So this is going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the first time that we've had outer planets making like positive alignments rather than more difficult alignments since COVID.
Are there any other transits you want to go over?
Yeah. So Chiron, which is the wounded healer asteroid, moves into Taurus. Other times in history where this has happened were the Great Depression. So some people are like, this is going to be a financial crash, financial fallout.
Okay.
Personally, with Neptune and Saturn and entering Aries, I'm going to be careful about what I choose to buy into and not perpetuate that. But I do think that this is where we could maybe see issues with digital currency, crypto crashes.
Okay.
People who exclusively use the internet to trade, they're kind of being difficulty there because Chiron in Taurus wants us to heal scarcity wounds.
Right. And reevaluate our values.
Yeah. And that scarcity wounds around how do I think reality or the earth is going to respond to me based on what I believe about myself. You know, we've already had Uranus here helping us access different talents, tap into new abilities and gifts, maybe more psychic gifts, you know. But the question is, okay, what do I believe about the way that reality responds to me? Do I believe that it is fighting against me or working for me? Right. So this becomes a mass reprogramming of scarcity and greed. So I think it's a really good time to think about scarcity and abundance and what we were taught in our early lives about how we're provided for and what we're worth. Okay. You know, and it's a really good time to also do any kind of somatic healing, any kind of body work, any kind of physical work. You are not going to have as many financial issues if you attune to your body during a Chiron in Taurus transit.
Right. What do you think are the ins and outs this year?
I have a list prepared.
You have a list?
Yeah.
Okay.
In, doing it yourself.
Okay.
DIY movements. Not waiting for somebody else to do it. Just do it yourself.
Okay.
Outs is passivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean that in terms of also the passive aggression. Out.
Out.
In, aggression.
Okay.
Being direct. Confrontation.
Yeah.
Just telling it how it is. Speaking the truth. Truth is a frequency.
Right. Isn't truth the highest
Truth is
vibration?
a higher
than love?
Higher than love.
Wow.
So this
There you
is
have it.
a year of truth.
Okay.
Outs, avoidance, bed rotting, doom scrolling, virtue signaling, worshiping celebrities, being concerned about what people think, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, all of these things are out. In a cultural sense, it is incredibly favorable to be physically in community rather than virtually in community.
Okay.
Athleticism is very much in. Working out is very much in. Celebrating heroes, celebrating rebels is very much in, rather than celebrating celebrities who express their empathy over Instagram. Ancestral healing is a big theme with Jupiter in Cancer. Out is spiritual appropriation, where you decide to dedicate yourself to a spiritual practice that is not earned, not yours. You shouldn't be anywhere near it. Out is imposter syndrome. In is just winging it on the fly. Ins is our community uprisings. Outs, clout chasing.
Thank God.
In, flying cars.
Flying cars?
Flying cars, yeah.
You think it's going to happen this year?
Yeah. Hoverboards, flying cars. In the next 7 years.
In the next 7 years, we are going to get flying
Uranus
cars.
and Gemini, why? We have all these innovations. Why are there no hoverboards? In every single movie about the future, there is hoverboards. People are hovering above the ground. We were talking about air travel advancements.
Right.
I don't want to see this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were Uber Eats drones.
Okay.
The little robots, but with wings.
Right. So things are getting faster.
Yeah.
I mean, that really fixes the traffic problem.
Yeah, exactly. Ins, whistleblowers, outs, influencers. So
it's interesting, all of the things you've been saying about Instagram and influencers, because there's an influencer economy now. It's really how a lot of people make their money. But I've seen these videos that talk about the death of the influencer, because rather than making content that comes from the heart, it feels like everything on the internet is now an ad, and no matter what, if you think you're seeing something that's authentic, you're nearly always being sold something.
Yeah.
You think that is going to have something to do with it?
I think that it's not that the digital, connecting digitally is not going to go away, but I see a decentralization of Instagram as the central piece. And instead it's going to be I'm going to join this app for, I'm going to join Stars Line, or I'm going to join this specific app for people who are like me. Yeah. Kind of a different mediums. Right. Maybe smaller groups, more niche, more independent. The psychic hold of the virtual sphere just will have less control over us. I also just think that people don't like pretentiousness. Neptune in Pisces is so pretentious. It's this, you fall in love with the illusion of someone or how they appear, but Neptune in Aries is about, what's their energy? These transits, it's not like overnight something shifts. That's not how this stuff works. It's we've been gaining psychic intelligence for 14 years. Now things become really obvious. So we don't need to overthink it anymore. Right. We don't need to be is this real? Is this not real? That's the energy we've been in. Is this real? Is what I'm feeling or intuiting real? It's real for you. Move on. Yeah. So it's kind of not second guessing our intuition is a huge part of all this. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Grace. Of course. Lovely to chat with you. We will be doing more of these. Thank you all so much for watching. We hope you have an amazing year. Yay. Thank you.